J.K. Scott will punt it for the Chargers. Kicks it very high. And the ball loose. Muffed. Loose at the 30. Falling on it at the 27. It looked like the Chargers got the muff. The snap. Ball put down. Kick is away. End over end. It's good. It's good. The Chargers have won. And they have never led until now. And the pain so excruciating that Hopkins, after the game-winning kick, falls to the turf, holding onto his leg, but he's won it.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
A muffed punt and then a game-winning field goal courtesy of our friends at Westwood One Radio. That was the call you heard. It is noon on a Tuesday on Peacock, but of course it is 5 o'clock somewhere. He's Jake Croucher and I'm Matthew Berry. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, served by Applebee's. Jake Croucher. I don't know if it's proudly served by Applebee's. It's just at the moment it's served by Applebee's. We've asked Applebee's, hey, would you like to say
pride level?
Would you like to say it's proudly served by you? It's like exclusively served by you?
Just
and then I said, no, it's served. Just
yeah.
served.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like it's sort of like one of those things. Well, you know, Applebee's, you know, anyone, they welcome all guests.
Yes.
So that, you know, no judgment. Whoever walks through the doors, they'll serve you a home cooked meal there at Applebee's. And I sort of feel like that's the same thing with us. They're just sort of like, we're not going to judge.
No.
You know, we've yeah.
I feel like it's the same thing with Monday Night Football at the moment as well, where it's served, but Monday Night Football it serves the NFL, maybe not proudly at the moment. Another rough primetime game last night. Chargers beat the Broncos 19-16 in overtime. Again, the Broncos becoming the kings of serving up free football that no one wants.
And they've got a lot more primetime games coming up.
Yeah.
Standalone games.
Sunday Night Football against Kansas City. I think we are shipping them off to London soon, though.
Oh,
and now you look on screen at the notable fantasy results. Notable meant ironically, I think, because it was really just Austin Ekeler. Josh Palmer had a good game. Russell Wilson looked good for a half, and then Justin Herbert, who is kind of the story in a way, he is just not putting up stats at the moment.
Yeah, certainly he is not. Look, a lot of people say like, wow, I didn't get my Monday Night Miracle last night, but I disagree. I think there were a lot of Monday Night Miracles last night if you were facing Mike Williams or Cortland Sutton or even Justin Herbert, and I was up 7 in a match and I was done, and my opponent had Cortland Sutton.
Yeah.
7 points in a PPR. This is a 16-team PPR league, and I'm up 7 in in this, and I'm down. You know, and like literally, we play on this league's on ESPN, and ESPN gave me like a 98% chance to lose.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Cortland Sutton 7 points. That's nothing. That's that's 3 for 40.
Yeah.
That's nothing. Anyway, and what do you know? 3.4 fantasy points. Who's looking smart and has 2 thumbs? This guy.
Yeah. Really
and
just
not smart,
Ekeler.
but lucky. I got lucky last night. So there are a lot of Monday Night Miracles if you were facing any of these players because they did not perform. Look, Austin Ekeler showed up, Jay, and I don't know that there's much more to say other than thank you, Austin Ekeler.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Yeah, RB1 right now in fantasy. I think going forward, it's probably between him and Saquon if you're redrafting. And he just continues to deliver. It wasn't the most exciting last night, but he just accumulates stats. His receiving work gives him such a high floor where he is right now, the best player in fantasy. As you can see, you know, in terms of his RB ranks this season, leads the league in targets, leads the league in receptions, second in receiving yards, and that's where all the value is coming at the moment.
Tied for second in total touchdowns with 6 after not scoring any in the first 3 games. He's got 6 over the last 3 games, 66% of the offensive snaps. He had 16 targets in this game. Like the Broncos, such a good defense. They were giving Herbert anything downfield, so just a lot of dump-offs to Austin Ekeler, one of the most fantasy-friendly NFL players in the league, and he will be joining the happy hour next week. So the definitive Austin Ekeler interview coming next week to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. We'll be excited to talk to him. Let's talk about Herbert and the pass catchers here. No Keenan Allen in this game. Broncos are the best pass defense in the NFL. They're allowing just 1 touchdown per game. I sort of feel like you kind of chalk this up to tough matchup is what it is.
Tough matchup, and I think the absence of Keenan Allen is just magnified by going against Pat Surtain, who is the best cornerback in the NFL right now, arguably. Yesterday we talked about Mike Williams, his under receiving yards. He didn't even sniff that 68.5. Pat Surtain put the clamps on him, and with no Keenan Allen, basically no Mike Williams because of the Sertan treatment. It became the Josh Palmer show, basically, a little bit of Gerald Everett. But I think that Keenan Allen should come back next week, and I think it should be a more explosive passing offense after that, which will obviously help Justin Herbert.
Palmer 9 for 57 on 12 targets in this one. And if you're sitting here, you're worried about Justin Herbert, you're worried about Mike Williams, here's what I can tell you, and I can tell you very simply. Next week they play Seattle.
Yeah.
There you go. They play Seattle. And I get it, Seattle shut down Arizona. It was a disappointing game, but there's been one game where the Seahawks have played decent defense. I'm not ready to buy the Seahawks' sudden resurgence. No, they have a nice corner. Like they've found some pieces on defense. They're not a disaster, and they're getting better, but certainly at home to the Seahawks next week, I'm still starting Justin Herbert as a top 10 play. He'll come in low in my top 10, but he'll still be a QB1 this week. And Mike Williams, again, he has 6 games this year. 3 with 110 or more yards, 3 with under 20 yards. This is what you get with Mike Williams. We talked about this top of the year. We just said Mike Williams is he's one of those very inconsistent players. It'll be up and down, up and down. You'll never be able to pick which games to start him or sit him. You just have to start Mike Williams, let it fly, and at the end of the year, he's going to wind up as like wide receiver 16.
Yep.
The points will be there. We did think that this would not be a great game for him, however. He made the hate list this week. Yesterday, you took the under on his receiving yards prop, which hit like magnificently. Like you had like 50 yards to spare.
I was sweating a 61-yard bomb in overtime, which would have knocked the over, and he did almost catch a very deep pass, not quite 61 yards. But yeah, you just have to start Mike Williams. He's trick or treat. You have to live with the consequences. You might not be starting Russell Wilson. And a lot of people, I think, have already given up on Russell Wilson. He is the biggest story, again, because he's in prime time every single week, it feels like. And I think the whole idea about him going to Denver was that he was going to get the chef's hat. It was going to be Russ's kitchen at last. But right now, the kitchen is burning. And in the first half, he looked a little bit like Russell Wilson. And then in the second half, it just completely fell apart.
Yeah, what's weird is like as bad as this game was, he finishes his QB 15 in week number 6 for the season. He's 20th in points per game. The 15 total yards in the second half in overtime at the Chargers, just 1.5 yards per attempt in the second half. That's the worst of his career. What's weird is that before you look at the stats, I would have just said to the eye test, Russell Wilson actually looked better last night.
For sure.
He was making some plays. He was extending plays with his legs. He made some timely runs as well. I thought last night, in totality, even including the second half where he struggled, I thought Russell Wilson looked the closest to what we imagine Russell Wilson to be, what we remember Russell Wilson to be, than he has all season long, even in some of the wins.
Yeah, I think you take the first half of that game, the last drive against San Francisco. Russell Wilson is still in there, but he's just, at the moment, he is just so broken. I think that the big thing for me with Russ is that, normally when he was pressured in the pocket in his prime, you just expected he would get out of it because he's Russell Wilson. Such amazing awareness, the speed. And then in the second half last night and for much of the season, whenever he feels pressure, it just feels like he's going to get sacked or he's just going to throw the ball away too soon. He just has no comfort in this offense right now. None of the weapons are performing either, but he still is producing at an acceptable fantasy rate.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think, right. We've said this previously, and my guess is that if you drafted Russell Wilson as your only fantasy quarterback this year, you've already moved on.
Yeah.
Whether it's to Jared Goff or Geno Smith, worth checking to see in your waiver wire as we'll get into the quarterbacks this later in the show. But it's worth noting, did someone drop Jared Goff because of the bye week? Is Dak Prescott out there? I've actually seen Dak Prescott out there in a few leagues. We expect Dak Prescott to be back this week, and so I don't know, you don't want Russell Wilson as your only starting quarterback. I think in the right matchup, maybe there were signs of life last night, but not enough for me to feel confident. Because the Chargers coming into that game were a bottom 12 pass defense. Yeah,
and we thought that the Chargers, particularly after the first couple of weeks, would be a top 5 defense. Yeah. But now no Joey Bosa. J.C. Jackson, who's got $40 million guaranteed from the offseason, got benched last night.
Yeah.
If he was playing in New England right now, he wouldn't be starting based on the level that he's at. And he's not starting in L.A. either. So I think that kind of maximizes how bad last night's performance was relatively, that he couldn't do anything. But I do think the upcoming schedule for the Broncos, home to the Jets, Jacksonville, bye, at Tennessee. Now, the Jets aren't the pushover that they might have been at one point.
Yeah, don't insult my Jets.
Yeah, my New York Jets, with Sauce Gardner in town.
My New York Jets. You're a bandwagon guy.
Yeah.
I never doubted them. I've always been on the Jets bandwagon. No, but they're not a pushover. The Jets are absolutely not a pushover, but they're also not a defense that you would be scared of. Having said that, there's nothing that we've seen in the previous production of Russell Wilson. He'll be outside my top 10, well outside my top 10 when my ranks come out later this week. Let's move on here. Jerry Jeudy shouldn't be starting here. Cortland Sutton, I'm just chalking it up to a bad game. He's been mostly productive with Russell Wilson, even bad Russell Wilson. You certainly like him against the Jets and the Jags moving forward. And then finally, the only other thing that I thought was interesting here there's two other things to talk about with the Broncos, right? I think it's the backfield and the tight end situation. Let's start with the backfield here.
Yep.
Where Melvin Gordon
he
got benched.
Yes, he got benched. And so it was the Latavius Murray show with 15 carries for Murray. But all of a sudden, this Broncos situation, where coming into the season, in terms of clarity, you would expect that an injury to one of Javonte Williams or Melvin Gordon would create that clarity. No, it's gone the other way, where the injury to Javonte Williams has made it more muddled than ever.
My friend JJ Zachariason had a great tweet was saying, let me get this, some version of let me get this straight. Melvin Gordon was good enough to steal touches from Javonte Williams, but not good enough to take touches away from Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray, who was on the Saints 2 weeks ago, comes in and plays 27 offensive snaps. Mike Boone plays 21, Melvin Gordon just 9. Murray, 15 rush attempts for 66 yards. He catches the one target that he got for just -2 yards. But Boone also not really involved in the passing game that much. He did get the 4 targets there, but 1 reception for 3 yards. So, but 27 snaps for Boone, 27 snaps for Murray, 21 snaps for Boone. It was pretty delineated, right? 15 rushing attempts for Murray, 1 rushing attempt for Mike Boone. Mike Boone gets the 4 targets. Murray only gets the 1 target. It's okay, first and second down it's Latavius Murray. Third down it's Mike Boone. It sort of settled into that. Melvin Gordon, fantasy managers around the world asking, why did Melvin Gordon get benched? And by the way, Melvin Gordon didn't know either. Here, listen to him after the game.
Did Coach tell you at halftime that you wouldn't be a part of the offense in the second half?
No, no one mentioned anything to me.
So when you're on the sideline, are you just clueless?
Pretty much.
What are you thinking in that moment?
Just waiting for my number to get called so I can go out there and help my teammates. It was a close game. I felt like I could have helped make a difference, but apparently not.
Heartbreaking stuff from Melvin Gordon.
Apparently not. You feel bad. For those of you listening on the podcast, his face just felt like heartbroken. Really, you feel bad for Melvin Gordon. Look, I mean, I feel bad for Melvin Gordon. I don't feel bad for the listeners of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour podcast or watching the show on Peacock or on demand on the NFL on NBC YouTube channel, because we told you this was coming.
Yes.
We said 2 weeks ago, hey, Latavius Murray, pick him up. I think there's a chance that Latavius Murray takes this backfield over. Yesterday, when we did the Monday Night Football props, I took the under on Melvin Gordon total yards from scrimmage, which I won by a wide mile as well.
Never in doubt.
Never in doubt. And one of the reasons I was at is that, hey, I think Latavius Murray's going to get a lot of work in this game, right? You'll see some Mike Boone. Now, we'll get into running back waivers a little bit later in the show, and we'll talk about where you pick up Murray. But the fact of the matter is that every early down snap in the second half basically went to Latavius Murray.
I wouldn't be dropping Melvin Gordon just because there's so much lack of clarity, one bad game. Also, if this continues, he's not going to be the third string running back on the Broncos in week 14. That's not how this works. He'll get traded, he'll get cut, someone else will pick him up, maybe someone who needs a running back, and he can provide value there. So I think you just have to grit and bear it with Melvin Gordon on your bench for now.
Yeah, if you see, here's some tweets that Melvin Gordon liked. Okay, so Melvin Gordon needs to request a trade tomorrow. The utter disrespect from Jay Wild, right? PFF Steve, Melvin Gordon for Cam Akers, straight up. Charles Woodson, damn, what did Melvin Gordon do to get no burn, right? And these are all tweets that Melvin Gordon liked on Twitter.
I suspect he's not long for Broncos country.
No,
but
let's ride out of town.
Yeah, exactly, to the Rams.
Yeah.
One guy who might be sticking around, though, is Greg Dulcich, who was a story last night with 2 receptions, 44 yards, gets the touchdown, great touchdown catch. Is he someone who's going to be startable going forward?
I think he's a high-end tight end, too. 71% of the offensive snaps, very encouraging. He ran routes on 79% of Wilson's dropbacks, 11% target share in a low-volume offense. But that was his first game. So just behind the curtain. So I was, as we talked about yesterday, Jay, you and I played each other in our show league. Don't get me started on this dumb league. But we're a 14-team. It's a 14-team league, and I had Hawkinson on a bye. And I had Dalton Schultz, who was a late scratch. It wasn't on the injury report all week long, and then we get into Sunday Night Football, and suddenly he's inactive. And I'm like, okay, great. So now I've got to go pick somebody up, and obviously Gerald Everett is rostered in our league. Yep. So I had a choice between basically all the Broncos guys, and I picked up Albert Aquimbanam, who was then inactive.
Yes.
So I had a choice between Eric Saubert or Greg Dulcich last night. And I'm sitting there because I have nothing. And so I texted a Denver Broncos team source. And I said, what do you think? And they said they love Dulcich. He's really athletic, but he literally hasn't practiced with the team since OTAs. Yeah. Saubert probably has the better floor here. And so I went with Saubert, who does nothing. And, of course, Dulcich gets the touchdown. If there's a positive, my team was so decimated by injuries and bye weeks that it wouldn't have even if I'd started Dulcich, I still would have lost to you.
You would have, but it would have created more stress on my Monday night. It would have created
more stress on your part, which I'm always about.
Yeah.
But what I would say is the positives here is that really athletic tight end that they like a lot. The fact that Albert O was a healthy scratch here gives you some confidence. Again, we're not even willing to start Jerry Jeudy in this offense, but because tight end is such a vast wasteland, and that there's sort of this unknown around Dulcich, and there's some positives here, makes me feel like, and when we get to tight end waivers, we'll talk about where we rank him, but ultimately, I think there's some tight end 2 upside to him as we see the easier part of their schedule coming forward. As we mentioned, Jets, Jags, and Titans are 3 of the next 4 games, including a bye for the Broncos.
Yep. I think your man Dwayne McFarland said it best on Twitter, where he said that Dulcich is talented and he's unknown. And unknown creates upside, creates variance, and in the desolate wasteland that is the tight end 2 kind of range, the land of Cole Kmet, right? Why not take a shot on Greg Dulcich just because of the talent?
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.